Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Patch and Crash, a podcast where gaming life and culture meet. I'm here with my good friends Mike and Paul, and I'm Hans. And Mike, you have a little segment for us?
Yeah, it's called Play, Hate, and Miss. And we started this in our first episode, and we're going to continue it forward because it's a lot of fun. So I'll just start it off. What am I playing? Let's see. I'm playing a lot of the same mobile stuff that I talked about last week. Clash, as well as Knighthood. And by the way, Paul, this whole I got max 20 rank or whatever, or max rank is only 20. I think I'm at 17. So
45.
Is it 45? Okay, no, thanks. One more thing. I thought I was almost there. No, but I've added 2 more games. 45, really? Now I'm just angry. Angry. It was 20 at one point. Clearly, I missed the memo somewhere where it's raised from 20 to 45. Maybe it always was 45, and I'm just chasing a max cap. Anyway, I added 2 other games. One, true to form, Man-Eater. I did downloaded it. I played it. I at least got an hour in. I don't know if I have any commentary about it. Maybe I'll save it for later. And then Lonely Mountain Downhill. So it's actually a Kickstarter game that is now popped up on Steam that I picked up. And make no mistake, it's call it a low poly. They call it a low poly style mountain biking game. Don't let that fool you. It's a pretty difficult game. And even though it says it's arcade, it's not for the faint of heart. It's like the Dark Souls of mountain biking.
Yes, thank you.
And hating. Look, I'm in the middle of moving. There's boxes literally everywhere around me. The only thing I haven't packed is this PC and what I'm talking about. It's one of those things that it's like painting. When you start it, you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. And then an hour in, you're like, this is ridiculous. And that's kind of like packing for me all weekend and moving. So I'm hating on that. Missing, what I'm missing is a good gaming chair. I think I've always been, you guys know, a big console guy. And so I've had the luxury of a couch or a beanbag or something I can chill out on. Turns out that doesn't, as I've gravitated more to PC gaming, that doesn't work really well. And sitting in garden chairs and other things, that doesn't work really well for either. Well, maybe it's just my age. So anyway, that's me. Play, hate, and miss. Paulie, why don't you go? You're such a jerk.
Fine.
Okay, in my defense, I've had 7 days, maybe.
No, I mean, that's 20 is really good for 7 days. So yeah.
I play it every day. I'm committed to that
Good.
cause.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, play hate minutes. What am I up to? We played Dauntless on live stream last week. I tried to play it a little bit more today. I didn't go so well solo. It's not nearly as fun as when without playing with friends. So I got a little bummed after about an hour. It's like, meh. Which is kind of my thing with any game that's multiplayer focused now. If I end up playing solo, I don't like it. What am I missing right now? I'm still missing that time to play The Last of Us 2. Or sorry, the first Last of Us and the DLC. I disappointed in myself. And then lastly, what am I hating on? I'm going to go with the weather. It's been a little up and down the last couple of days, and I want it to stay sunny and nice. And it's been a little bit windy. It rained here or there, but I was kind of flying high, actually, for the last week because the weather started to get nice. But then the last couple of days kind of brought me back down. And I'm like, nah. So I'm upset with the weather.
Like a proper Swede, the conversation turns to weather. I like it.
How are you?
All right. So I've been still playing a bunch of Dota. I've always been, like you, Paul, where if I have a crew to play with, I'm down to play anything multiplayer competitive. But if I'm solo, I usually have rank-anxiety, right? But it's been going well. It's fun when you win, which is not as often as I wanted to. But that game's still got its hooks in me. I think we'll see when Path of Exile comes out with a new season. I'm probably going to switch over to that. Also, been playing a bunch of Fallout Shelter with my kids. So Fallout Shelter is a mobile game. I play it on Switch, but it's basically the same game. Because we picked up the board game. There's like a board game version of it. It's kind of weird, but it's a little board game version of it, yeah. You get it in one of these lunch boxes, right? But yeah, so I've put some time into that one. For my hate part, though, I'm trying to put a little bit of a not positive spin on this one, but I don't want to sound like an old man complaining all the time. But I do hate that we don't have any alternatives to like when GDC was canceled and all these trade shows were canceled. We got Jeff Keighley's summer party time, but we don't really have any alternatives where small companies and indies gets to pitch their ideas and raise funding. And we've already seen companies that just went bankrupt just because they couldn't kind of make any of those necessary connections at GDC. So I'm hating the fact that we don't have any kind of alternatives to the trade shows. Missing, I think I'm missing. I had an idea about pinball machines, pinball games. That used to be a big thing, right? So a lot of times you'd have. It's like the only category of gaming where movie tie-ins are actually good. You know, I used to spend a lot of money on like the Terminator pinball game, you know, and it's Star Trek: The Next Generation pinball machines, right? But
jeez.
Yeah. So so I'm actually missing those. There are like none to be found anywhere. So that's me.
Yes, I'm sitting here going back and forth in the fuck. By the way, we've earned the right for the record, Hans. I love that you're like caveat it, like it's just me. I'm like, no. Au contraire, my friend. You've earned the right to complain when you get to the I don't know how many decades you are. Wow. We'll just skip over that. So hey, the last week we talked a lot about mobile gaming and the effect on premium HD gaming. Is it a good or bad thing? And there was a lot of good, a lot of bad, and a lot of indifference, if you want to say that. This week we're going to talk about free to play and is it a good thing? Not just on premium HD gaming, but gaming overall. So yeah, let's talk about it. Paulie, what do you think?
I mean, I like free-to-play gaming. I know that when it first came out, there was a lot of controversy around it. Some people felt like, especially in the mobile space, it was kind of a race to the bottom from like a business perspective. I actually, to be frank, I kind of held that feeling for a bit, but I think that as time went on, I kind of understood some of the benefits that it brings to gaming. Similar to when we talked about mobile last week, I think it gives more people a chance to be a gamer. So I'm still excited by the opportunity for this to just open up to different audiences. So I'm down with free to play gaming. I play a lot of stuff. I think it's a benefit overall for the industry.
Hans, what are you thinking?
You can't stop the march of technology, right? This is free to play is growing and growing and growing, and I'm not happy with. I think how it's going to affect the smaller game studios and the smaller types of games. I think that as more and more games are going to shift towards, I think gamers are going to be much more used to playing free-to-play games on their consoles and their PCs. Because right now there's not a ton of options. It's maybe not the sort of biggest genre of games on PC or consoles. Definitely on mobile. I don't know about those numbers. Maybe you have them, Mike. But as we go and sort of grow more and more accustomed to playing free to play, and it's kind of a big ask to have your audience pay $60 for a game. But also developing and marketing and producing a game that is free to play is vastly different than making a game with a small studio and trying to sell that on Steam or any other online store. So I think that it's going to be the second indie apocalypse. What's going to kill the indies?
Okay, you know what I love? How consistent both of you are. Paul's like, everything is awesome.
Yeah.
and
it's going to be an end world for
the world is ending
segment.
Next week.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I'm going to say something that is not that different than last week, which is it depends. No, I can't. I know. It just seems like So here's the thing. I'm leaning far more towards Paul. I think it's a good thing, but it comes with a heavy price. A lot of the things that we talked about are endemic within gaming. Things like monetization schemes, and which I think shortcut a lot of the play experiences. At the same time, I love that free to play. I think the big difference between pay to play and free to play is pay to play very much is how can I get enough content so I can, what's the value proposition on day one so I can charge a certain amount so people can pay for it. And I think what's missed in that, where I think free to play is stronger, is that you more often than not are trying to find fun, because and you're more focused in on gameplay, and that actually that fun has to be really powerful early on, I think. And then you will layer on different kind of monetization schemes over time. And it isn't to say that pay to play isn't that way, but I think it's more concerned that how do I capture people's money up front? And you are seeing it blending over time. So it's, I think, in some ways difficult because you're seeing elements of both cut across the aisle of both. But I think it is good, to your point, Paulie. It's more people are gaming today, by and large, because of free to play, or at least the fact that it's made it more accessible. Yeah. But it also, I think, creates more bad behavior too. And I don't know if it is always a good thing. So that's why I say it depends. It's hard for me to take a side on some of this stuff. To answer your question, by the way, earlier, Hanzo, well, we'll talk about this. How about this? Let's. I think that's our position. So I'm going to kind of wrap with this. Paulie, big thumbs up. Hans, big thumbs down. Me, I'm kind of like mid between, kind of going the way of free to play.
Need to get you to pick a side.
Right, but how about then? I will convince you. I will convince you. So right now, if you go on Steam, you find a game that's $20, right? Then you kind of know that this is a sort of 30-hour experience, and that's fine. Right? I didn't put a lot of money in, and it's fine. It could be a 12-hour experience. It could be like a short story. You play through it, and then you're good. Maybe you'll come back once they put out some DLC, and then it's fine. You'll pay another $10, and you get another 10, 20 hours out of that. With free-to-play games right now, all of them go in and saying, like, this is your lifestyle from on now, right? The only reason for you to sit down in front of a computer is to play my free-to-play experience, right? There's no sort of 30 or 20 or 10-hour experience that is free-to-play that you can make a sustainable business out of. So, like, if we can solve that, so there are free-to-play games that are small or niche or whatever, cater to a smaller audience or something else, then maybe the smaller studios that develop these kinds of games will be able to survive. But I don't think so. I think it's a foregone conclusion with cloud gaming as well coming, and I know not everybody believes that we're going to be streaming games over the internet, but Stadia might be looking like a joke right now, but in 5 years, I think most people, basically out of convenience, are going to be streaming their games, and then it's going to be such a gosh darn hassle to buy a game over here and buy a game over there. So you're just going to have everything for free to play. Maybe a subscription model, but most of the stuff is just going to be free to play out of convenience.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine smaller studios being able to survive or smaller games being made.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I don't necessarily get the connection with the small studios yet, but I don't, or at least subscribe to it entirely. I think, yeah. But I was going to say, I definitely think this is why it's always a struggle. And you're right. I should probably pick a side. I'm really bad at that stuff. But I do think a part of the beauty of pay to play is it does protect the integrity of the experience. Meaning, I know what I get into more often than not. I'm not so as concerned. In free to play, you're so concerned, especially when you introduce an economy and you're not really sure what the in rates. There's so much focus on that. It isn't to say those things don't exist in pay to play experiences more and more, but that's your entire economy. That's how you make money. And I there is something to be said about being able to pay $10, $15, $20 and know that you're not going to have to worry about the totality of the experience, people messing with it, the fact that I can grind throughout the game and not have to kind of worry about that. And so I think that from a player standpoint. Now, the indie thing, I want you to kind of go back to that, because I don't fully kind of understand why indie studios, this would be a threat to them.
Right. So if you want to shift your business and start making a free-to-play game, if you're if you're a dozen people in your company, then it's a completely different market for that. it's very hard to develop the amount of content that people assume will be there at launch, and to be able to sustain, these kind of lifestyle gaming.
Because it takes more resources to support.
Oh, it does, absolutely, and it's also like you're up against the big guys in terms of marketing. You need to make sure that you're as complete an experience as Destiny if you want to make a small shooter that's free.
But isn't that the case with pay to play? Like I mean, I think there's two things I'd say just as a retort. One is I think you're already in that game today, right? If you have a pay to play experience, you're still going to have to support it over a long period of time in keeping production teams. And two, the part of the beauty of free to play, unlike pay to play, is, especially from a marketing budget standpoint, you really don't have to spin up as much. And you actually may be the great equalizer in some ways, because you don't have to spend 20 or 30 or whatever it is, millions of dollars to get the attention up at the head of a game, which is where you particularly kind of monetize. And unlike free to play, where you don't usually get as much revenue at the start, and you can kind of craft your experience over time. So
I would say the assumption, if I see a free-to-play game on console or PC, my assumption is not that I'm going to be able to spend, 8 hours and have 8 hours of fun out of this game. So it's going to be a grindy experience, and that might be cool. I'm not against that. I do play a ton of these free-to-play games. I do. But sometimes I just want to get in there and play a small game that I pay a small bit of money for. So unless we can change the sort of value proposition, and we can sort of teach gamers there are different kinds of free-to-play games, but I don't know.
I think that's where you kind of just left it, was where my head's at is. I think there's always going to be a place for free-to-play and pay-to-play games. I think that the type of experience, just without really going too deep into like thought process behind this, like how would you ever make a free-to-play narrative-driven game? Like I'm struggling to find how that would.
Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, but that's my point, right? It's like I can't imagine it right now without maybe sitting down for a couple hours and trying to sketch out something. But like, I don't think that that's really something that players would ever want
after each dialogue.
But see, people would hate that, right? Like,
I know.
You know what? No, I take it back, right? If that's how old arcade games work to some degree, I mean,
a little bit. If you wanted to see Shao Kahn's finishers, right, you got to put in the coin.
Yeah, I don't know about narrative. Narrative is always tough, right? I don't. But I don't know. This is the beauty of our industry, right?
Yeah.
Each time that you think that may not work, then you see something like episodic gaming all of a sudden blow up. You're like, oh, that's cool. I knew that was always out there, and that kind of blew up. And you're like, well, it's kind of like, what's that?
Someone will figure it out, I'm sure. But now I'm kind of backpedaling. But no one will figure it out. But here's the thing. I think that cloud gaming is going to be a thing. Not everybody agrees, but I think in 5 years, most people are not going to buy a $2,000 computer to play games that they have to download 100 gigs worth of, because everything is super large, and like you can just rent a computer. But then like, where do you want to buy your next Assassin's Creed game, right? Do you want to buy it on Steam, and then you can stream it on there, or if you buy it on different platforms, it's going to be islands of content, right? So maybe you just want to have free-to-play games. It's a lot. It's probably what the market is going to be asking for when you have a cloud gaming situation. Like, let us just either have a subscription thing, or let us just support this by buying cosmetics or whatever. And I can't imagine that Assassin's Creed game that's free to play. I don't want to see that game.
Yeah, no, and that's what I mean. Like, I think that there's always going to be opportunities for both of those things.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're going to see a blend of different models. You'll probably see a blend of different types of free to play, which you're already seeing in the market today, or free to play elements in pay to play games, which is what you're kind of seeing. But I think I'm going to pick a side. I think it's good. It can be devilish, and I'll be honest. There are times where I'm cursing it, and I know for a fact that I have paid far more for this particular free to play experience than I would have if it was pay to play. Because just by virtue of just the mechanics, but I'm okay with that, because the way I rationalize it is, if I'm going to spend that much time, and this is part of the beauty of free to play, if I'm going to invest the time in that game, and it's relative to how much time I pay. Peace. I'm good with that. And I think that's part of the reason why I think there's more, this trend continues to accelerate, because from a player's standpoint, people look at this and say, am I going to pay $60 and not finish the campaign and only get maybe 1/4 of the overall value prop or the experience of what I paid for? Or do I get to kind of pay and play, pay as I play, so to speak? And so I think that is one of the compelling kind of draws to it, and the fact that it's just free, of course, which everybody draws to.
I think going to your example of a free to play Assassin's Creed, Hans, like, and then tying that into Mike's point about if I buy a $60 game, I want to get the maximum value out of that. But if I get partway through the campaign and just turn it off, well, you didn't really get all of your money's worth, because there's so much stuff packed into that game. And you think about over time, the amount of stuff that we'll keep on Assassin's Creed, because I think it's a good example. Like, they'll keep throwing DLC at it, and they'll keep kind of just the amount of time that you can spend in that game is so large. How much money you spend, you're still paying like less than $1 an hour of value, which is so much cheaper than any other form of entertainment. So I kind of like when I play free to play games, I kind of look through it from the same lens, but I still like do the mental math. I'm like, is this item really worth this much money in terms of like if I want to shortcut a grind? And most of the time I can say no. But what I then go back to is, okay, but how much time have you spent playing this game? How much entertainment hours have you gotten out of this game up until this point? And I can do the math and be like, I've put 100 hours into this game and I've not spent $5. Like, I feel like I'm being stingy to the developer at this point. Like, it's a weird mental thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said, Hans, because I think it is interesting, because I don't know, just thinking about the end game of free to play and where it actually goes. And I think you're right. Like, in a world where this evolves to be more and more subscriptions, more and more cloud gaming, and you align those two really well, right? 5 years from now, then you're like, well, why do I free to play anything? And I think you do flip. Like right now, 88. I was just looking up the numbers before we jumped on here. I think it's $88 billion in 2018 was free to play of the $110 billion of gaming, which is kind of insane, right? And that's very mobile, very PC, right? Not nearly as much console. And I didn't get a chance to go into the details. I just did a quick kind of search on the internet, so it must be true. But but anyway, but back to that point. But in a world where you're paying for access to games, it kind of renders a lot of free to play, that at least business model, partially invalid. And then you do get a lot of the monetization schemes that you historically do. But it's interesting, like, because it's like, well, if I pay for the same for Assassin's Creed or any other free to play game, why would you even make it a free to play game? And how do you even think about monetization? Is everything free to play? Because you really, I don't know. I'm throwing that out there as it's an interesting world 5 years from now, when, let's say that, hypothetically speaking, 60% of or 70% of gamers are getting games through access of a subscription. Then what?
Yeah.
The Netflix model, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it'll be interesting, right? Because at that point, you're like, well, I don't really need the subscription to get that free to play game because it's free, and the subscription I'm paying for. So what am I actually getting in there? So for me, like, the easy answer is, okay, well, you get some sort of head start or benefit thing if you are part of a subscription. But if everything's a part of a subscription, then even that part goes away. Then you're like, well, then how do I interact with this game? Or maybe it's just they don't care that, you could get this thing anywhere, and they don't care that you're part of a subscription, and you still just get microtransacted to craziness. But
I mean, there's a ton of games right now that will be full price, that have a season pass, that has, I mean, I don't know. There was a long time ago since I played Destiny. I probably need to buy something in order to play the game again, even though I bought that full price. It's so that might also be a style of pricing games in the future.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at I think we have my blur effect on the entire episode, which is great. It's
but
so annoying.
Vaseline on this. That works.
And the only thing that works, this is the crazy shit. The only thing that works is literally putting my hand over the camera. So
excellent.
So there you go. I mean, you can either edit that in post, or we can just have the Mike's hand over the camera every 5 minutes.
I will absolutely edit this in post. I'm not.
Okay, so free to play. Let's talk. We got some more time on the clock. I think we got a couple more minutes. So we pressed forward, and we looked at some of this stuff. What is it that? So Paulie, I want to go back to a couple of things. One, you're like, I'm good. I'm in. Accessible. It's awesome. Surely not everything is awesome.
I mean, there's the stuff you always hear about is the predatory practices that a lot of games have in terms of loot box mechanics or gotcha mechanics, I think is a more correct term. But it almost feels like gambling. Like you're the game is designed and built around the fact that you're trying to chase that hit to get that awesome thing. FIFA Ultimate Team is probably the primary example of that thing that a lot of people bring up. There's a scandal with Battlefront 2 some years ago that kind of kicked off the whole resurgence and people going, is this really what we want in games? So I think that there's that element to it. And I think that without getting too deep into the whole should government step into this type of thing, I think that the shorter answer is like you should always try to treat your players with respect. And I think that people always try to abuse that system. And I think I would hope that people are better at seeing these things, but I understand how and why these things happen. So yeah, there can be negatives that come out of it because if it's free, you need to make money somehow. And, people will always try to find a way to make easy money, as it were.
Yeah.
But that aside, like, I think that it's like with any new, it's not necessarily technology, but with any new kind of approach to thing, there's always going to be good and bad while people kind of figure shit out. And I think we're kind of getting through that right now, where I think most of the way forward, people are trying to find better practices. The interesting thing for me, though, is will these ways forward be as profitable, and will companies that previously relied on that type of element suddenly go, oh boy, our revenues are way down because we're not nickel and diming somebody in a casino-like manner, so maybe we can't afford to do all this stuff before. How do we rethink how we make games going forward? I think it'll be a big shift.
Yeah, I'll just add one point to that because I'll go a little step further. I think that it can be free to play in particular, and a lot of those that have carried over those gotcha mechanics, monetization schemes, however you want to call it, and there's different levels of aggression in that area, right? Depending on how much money we want to make, and you've already listed some examples. They're a distraction to good, I think, gameplay design. I think very few times do people get it right where they bring joy to pay. Like, I actually want to pay for that. That's cool. I'll do that. Type as I try to refocus my camera. But but just don't worry about me. I'm just going to be all episode long. But I think as I lose my train of thought. But I think it's unfortunate because whether it's that or ad sponsor gaming and everything else, interruptions, like, gone are the days, and it's unfortunate, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think this is what pay to play I miss about when I said earlier about kind of the integrity. And I mentioned economy, but there's other things, which is I kind of just want to pay to play a game. I don't want to fuck around with any other mechanics. I don't want to be boxed out here and wait and have to pay for a catch-up, or consumable or something else just to play, because sometimes that's all I want to do. And to me, that was always the motivation in playing in the first place. And so it hangs it up a little bit. And I think me being a more impatient gamer, maybe that's one thing that I hope, because you're seeing a trend more and more, where I think that, I hope that it doesn't continue to persist, because I want to get back to the purity of gaming.
So I think that's the thing, right? You say the purity of gaming. I think that is super subjective. I think games are games. Like but what you're talking about is your vision of like games 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? Whereas everything was a premium game and you know what you paid for, you knew what you got. I think that things evolve, and I think that there are good and bad game mechanics. Like there have been really shitty premium games.
Sure, we're speaking in absolutes, but for a second say that there's some egregiousness to this, right? And I think there's more. Free to play has, I think, accelerated some of that egregious behavior, because I'll use a word that Hans did last week, which is we're desensitizing people to some of those things. And so we've tolerated things like, oh, it's okay when I get done with whatever I'm doing and, going a round of gaming, and let's call it on my mobile game. It doesn't matter what name it is because I won't name any. And then all of a sudden I get an ad pop up. Got to watch it because, whatever it is, to get to the next whatever thing. And I know that I'm playing a free-to-play game, but I would gladly probably pay just to get to the purity of that experience or not have to wait to unlock a particular kind of, let's call it loot box or whatever it is. And so I think you're right that some of that stuff is out there. And I think that is gaming evolving. But the question then becomes, is it in a good way? And did free-to-play actually accelerate that change?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think also it kind of sucks where game design or game mechanics are informed by, whether you've purchased something or not. Like there should be a pretty clear line there, I believe. Maybe we just let make sure that the design team never talks to the marketing team.
I love that you waited this long to happen.
It's just like you're not allowed to talk to each other.
I'm going to pretend Hans didn't even say that. But it's like we have to keep score of how many shots.
That's how you get back to the purity of gaming, Mike.
Yeah, I like it. I'm going to throw one more at you because I'm going to let Hans. I want Hans to kind of throw something out. Here's a spin on that because nobody ever talks, or we don't talk as much about this, which is you still got to make money to support our games. We don't. Yeah. And so in some ways, a lot of the stuff that we are seeing, you could make the argument that that's the only way to survive in gaming. Because there wasn't long ago, which you guys were all there, maybe 10, 5, even today, right? You're seeing studios, it's a very kind of up and down, hit-driven business. And it's very difficult in this business. And if you don't do well and have enough support for your game and make enough money for your game, like look at Telltale as a great example. They made great games, great narrative games, great episodic games, and they're no longer in business. And in part because they probably couldn't, to your point earlier, Paulie, couldn't adapt to the fact that, not so much to the market, but to the ability to make money in a different way.
Yeah, because they were a company they were in the forefront of a new way of making games, of marketing games, and they were extremely successful. And they grew their company, and all of a sudden, it's just like in a few years, yeah, nobody cares about that kind of style of games anymore.
It's unfortunate too, because the quality of games that they had were great.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think so. Very much on that point. Like, I think that Telltale is actually a really mixed example. I disagree with some of the points you guys made about it being very successful. I think if I read up on some of like what happened behind the scenes with their company, I think it was poorly mismanaged. Like I think that they floated by, like they scraped by. Like I don't think they were like, we're sitting in so much money. This is we're living the life. I think it was like we're living paycheck to paycheck. We just happen to keep getting licenses for huge games, and then we have to sell a lot just to break even. And they just skated by until they just ran out of runway. Like I don't think it was successful. I think that they made good games. They were interesting. Quality wise, I'd argue with you a little bit. Those games were choppy as fuck. But I loved them. Like they were so much character. They were really well narratively created. But they had some technical issues with things.
I'm going to fact check that, Paulie.
That's fine.
But the average Metascore is 75 in their games. Highest is 94. Just saying. That's pretty good. Come on.
Which game was highest?
Sorry.
Is it which
Walking
game?
Dead, the Telltale.
Of course.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, that said, like, you said they pioneered kind of the episodic thing. And I actually thought that was going to take off way more. I think that they were like, let's look at what TV does, what like how some other streaming services are doing this in the other areas of entertainment. And they tried something new, and I thought it would go really well. I think I may have seen a GDC talk or something where they talked about how many people would come back episode after episode after episode. Similar numbers to how you see people would play or drop off in a campaign in a $60 game, except that they didn't get the money for those third, fourth, fifth episodes.
I think let's talk about that because I agree with you. So one, I think they deliver pretty good quality games. But I think I agree with mismanagement. I don't know all that behind the scenes, but it sounds like I can see that too. The bigger issue is in pushing down a new way, episodic gaming, you lose your audience. And there's no, and they could have structured it maybe in a different way, right? I don't know what that could be. Maybe it's like in a world where you have battle passes, is that the way to kind of better and I think they did some of that in the end. I'm not really sure, but I think there could have maybe been a smarter way to monetize your stuff because they drop just inevitably people drop off in campaigns, and you could see the same thing in episodic.
But I think it was really interesting. I'm so glad that they tried it. I remember when they did it, I was like, that was cool. I was super happy to see that.
Yeah, like also no competitors. Nobody was doing that. But maybe people saw that it was a scary thing. But I thought at the time, like these guys are killing it because nobody's sort of taking those ideas and competing with them.
And it's always one of those scary things where you're like, oh man, are they killing it because they're the only ones there, or is no one there because it's a bad idea?
Yeah, it's like I'm running. It's like, why is nobody running with me on this one?
It's the memo.
You know?
Yeah. I'm not sure. Why am I here?
I'm in the leads. I'm like, oh, I'm the only guy in the race.
Exactly.
But I do have a bit of a positive spin on free to play. Like if you want to do it, because Paula did is like, oh, what's the negative side of it? I do think on PC though, because we as consumer, we as gamers, we have a little bit of a different relationship with the makers of games on PC and consoles than maybe a mobile game would. I don't think there's as much transparency and communication with people, playing your silly ass knighthood game, right? So like the games I enjoy playing that are free to play are like Warframe and Path of Exile, which have a very active, community, and the people behind the games talk very frankly about their games, which means that they will often have, support the developer packages they can buy. So you're basically putting $60 into Path of Exile every 4 months when they put out the new season because I like what they do. So I basically rebuy the game multiple times a year. Same thing with Warframe. So you couldn't really pull that off on a mobile title, I think.
Yeah, or just even on an HD title, right? Because it's like, hey, or on a previously premium title, you're like, well, you paid the price once. Why would you make me pay for it again? But with free to play, you have the opportunity, to do it again, which I think is the where that business model works really well. Is people can just endlessly, like if you have the right mechanics, people can just endlessly throw money at you, and that means we dig into the territory of whales and people that spend thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on games, which is sometimes float game development themselves. But you're not going to get that with an HD game. I mean, HD games are risky from the perspective like Mike talked about. Is like there's a huge build up to that one launch, and then if not enough people buy it, row.
But by the way, I don't have an issue with that. On the free to play side, if people spend $100,000 in a game that they have put 1 million hours in, or whatever it is, at least at the end of the day that they have measured unless they're just paying to get ahead. Well, this gets into some other conversations. But I think it's usually relative to how much time you invest in the game. Whereas at least from a player standpoint, I think from my standpoint, I would much prefer that.
If a counterpoint to that though, so if you spend time in a game and then you spend a few $100s in a game, you're going to get something out of that game. So if I want to play a game and I want to spend $20 in that game, am I not going to get anything out of that? Because they've sort of priced things based on, the people that invest a ton of time in this game and a ton of money in this game are going to get sort of something out of it. It doesn't have to be like unlocks or, success in a game. It's just like fun. What kind of fun will I get out of a game that are willing to spend maybe $20 on a mobile game?
I think it depends on what you value, what you want to get out of the game. Like I think I
want to get to level 45 as well, man.
You can take your time.
Then you literally can pay $20 and get to level 45, which is probably what Paul did.
No,
I'm joking.
Oh, he's a grinder.
But I did drop some.
Grinder? Did you?
Yeah, man. I've been playing grindy RPG style games for ages.
No,
I love
how
the
much
grind.
Did you spend in Knighthood? Have you?
Well,
don't tell me how much you spent. Have you spent? Because I have not spent, and it took me a week to get to 17. I'm just
hold on. I think I spent like equivalent of like 40 USD.
Oh damn!
All right. Well, that's a game.
The first thing that they offered was here's a $60 bundle of gems for half off, and I was like, I played this game for 3 weeks straight, about 6 hours a day. Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. One more thing that I can't have. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it was like the only other thing I bought, I think, was like on day 5, I bought a $5 like kind of boost bundle, and I was like, well, I've already spent like a good 20 hours in the game. Like $5 is nothing. Like I don't care. Sure, let's go for it. I'm enjoying the ride.
Yeah, I one more thing that I was just going to say. We could go on and on about this stuff, by the way, because this is just it's fun, it's meaty, and we can talk about things like how good these games are getting and how targeted their ads are based on your player behavior, and it's actually stepping out of the experience. It's a marvel to watch. In the experience, I'm driven a little batty about nuts about it. But hey, let's I think this is, I think we've worked through a lot of this stuff. It's a good topic. That I think it's an interest. Sorry,
we're not going to solve this one tonight.
We're not going to solve it tonight. But I think I think what we should do, though, seriously, this is a meaty enough topic that we may have a part 2 at some point in the future. Maybe get some folks on here to talk about some more stuff. But so Paulie's thumbs up still. Typical Hans.
I mean, eventually we'll find a topic that I jive with, but I'm kind of scared for. I'm scared because we're gonna have change.
I just want to point out that Hans is against free to play games. Yet he's the one that he's of the 3 of us is playing the most free to play games right now.
That might actually be it. Yeah.
Yeah. You're probably right too, because you mentioned Warframe. I think every single conversation that we
same with Dota,
Warframe, Path of Exile. Yeah, it's a holy trinity of dumb stuff. Yeah,
that's amazing. All right, so let's just close it out with our "That's fucking cool."
Yes.
So I don't know if you guys had a chance to find anything that was that fucking cool that made this segment this week, but I tell you what, I'll start it off. So I, in the spirit of moving this week, and it's top of mind, things are all kind of crazy. So it's not so much gaming related or anything else, but just something that kind of broke my world yesterday in a really good way. And that was, your box and everything, it's crazy. You're trying to get, inevitably you always have stuff, right? Whether it's waste, whether it's I need help. For me, I had to get rid of furniture that wasn't going to fit in my next place. And there's this app. And, the app craze has kind of gone and left, right? There's always a new app for something. This is one of those apps that I was like, it was like this moment of, everything kind of comes out. And it's TipTap. I don't know if you guys ever used that. It started here in, I think, Stockholm, and it's now started to proliferate in Europe. So it's not hit the rest of the world. But there was this moment. It's like this deliver, move, remove. It's like peer-to-peer kind of waste removal. But it's like a better form of Craigslist. It's got a slick UI, and it's like take a picture, pop, and I can rate people. And no joke, here's the couple of experiences I had over the weekend. I needed to get rid of a couch. Nice couch. Posted it. Thanks. Giveaway. Within a matter of 10 minutes, could pick from a selection of people that had different ratings. Book. Thanks. Accepted. They were here 5-10 minutes later. Book. Done. It was that slick. It was just so good. So anyway, that was that fucking cool moment because one, it just relieved a ton of stress, and it reminds me of, when you have this disruptive, software apps solutions, call it Airbnb, call it Uber. That was the moment that I had where I was like, okay, that has changed my life in a very small way. So that's my fucking cool moment.
We just used it this week, and that was going to be one of the things I wanted to talk about because that thing's awesome.
No joke. You're kidding, right, Paul?
My God.
No, man, I'm serious. We got rid of.
What was your thing you got rid of then?
Oh, me. Oh, sorry. We got rid of I guess a deck table. It's a small little table that we have on our balcony from IKEA. We wanted to get rid of it. We wanted to get rid of a coat stand and something else. I think like a small cabinet. My wife was the same thing. She's like, "Oh, tip top." I was like, "Let's just do this thing." Boop, 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 boop. Gone. Same day. Like just amazing.
Excellent.
It really is. I mean, we sound like we're promoting. We should get some sponsorship from TikTok. but it is. I think to me, it was that same moment. When you find something that's that slick and that powerful, and you realize the disruption of kind of like that type of an experience. So anyway, go ahead, Hans. We're
cool. Oh yeah, no, but that sounds great. I mean, usually the way you did it before is people just called you like, "Hey, do you still have that thing?" It's like, "No, I don't have that thing because I removed the listing. You shouldn't have called me 3 3 days later. But this sounds good. All right, so I have a little bit of an observation. I've been seeing every couple of months I see a new game engine pop up. Right, there's usually some kind of open source thing. Some dude in his basement came up with a game engine, but the latest thing I want to say, there's a game engine called The Machinery from a company called Our Machinery. They were involved with BitSquid and Stingray, so there's a little bit of DNA mixed with me somehow. And I'm just happy that even though we have big game engines like Unity and Unreal and all the big studios are doing their own thing with Dice got Snowflake. No, wait, Frost Avalanche something, right? What was the name of it? Frostbite. There you go. I should probably know that. It still kind of indicates that there's a healthy sort of sound, movement in the gaming industry. I don't like monoliths, so I'm happy to see that there's something about that. I think that's fucking cool. Maybe you guys don't, but it's warms my nerd heart.
As the head of code, I would expect nothing less.
Yeah, excellent.
No, I mean, I think that's cool. I think that is cool.
But I think that wraps it up for this second episode of Patch and Crash. I'm happy to spend the last sort of 40-45 minutes talking with you guys, and I think there's a lot more stuff to talk on about free-to-play gaming, whether it's a sexy ploy, whether it's here to stay, whether it's the future, maybe it's the solution for cloud gaming. But with that, I want to round it off, and stay safe, everybody. Thank you all for listening. If you want to see more episodes of this podcast, please check out patchandcrash.com. Also, follow us on Twitter @patchandcrash, where we post about new episodes or live streams.